Imagine standing on the shore, watching a colossal container ship glide out of the port. On its deck, thousands of steel containers are stacked as high as a 9-story building. The total weight of this cargo exceeds 100,000 tons. The ship's hull is made of steel. Its engines are steel. Anchors, chains, bulkheads, steel, steel, steel. All of this weighs significantly more than water. Steel sinks. Every child knows this. Toss a steel bolt into a bucket and it will plummet to the bottom instantly. Yet here we have this behemoth of 200,000 tons of steel, fuel and cargo, not just floating, but crossing the vast Pacific Ocean. Through storms, with waves towering at 12 meters and a tilt of 30 degrees. And it doesn't capsize, it doesn't sink. Here's what most people don't grasp. A ship doesn't just float because it's hollow inside. That's like saying a plane flies because it has wings. Technically true, but practically useless. The real question isn't why a ship doesn't sink in calm waters. It's why it doesn't capsize in a storm. Why doesn't a 30-meter-high stack of containers topple it like a domino? Why can a ship, even when breached and taking on thousands of tons of water, still stay afloat? The answer isn't a single formula or principle. It's a meticulously calculated balance between gravity, buoyancy, hull geometry, and mass distribution. A balance where the safe corridor is measured in centimeters and degrees. A shift in any direction, and 200,000 tons of steel could flip and vanish beneath the waves in minutes. Today, we're diving into the hidden physics that keep a ship afloat and prevent it from capsizing. And I promise, after this, you'll never look at a passing vessel the same way again. Let's start with the basics. Why doesn't a steel ship sink? Archimedes' principle. A body submerged in a fluid is buoyed up by a force equal to the weight of the fluid displaced. This is taught in middle school, but few ponder what it truly means for a ship. A steel sheet sinks because its density is greater than that of water. But the same steel sheet, shaped into a box, displaces a vast volume of water with relatively little mass. The empty space inside the hull isn't nothing. It's air, with a density 800 times less than water. A ship is a steel shell filled with air. The average density of this construction, hull plus air plus cargo, must be less than that of water. Then, buoyancy exceeds weight, and the ship rises until these forces balance. The equilibrium point determines the draft, the depth to which the ship is submerged. The heavier the cargo, the deeper the draft. The greater the hull volume below the waterline, the more water is displaced, and the greater the buoyant force. As long as there's reserve volume in the hull, the ship floats. If the weight exceeds the maximum buoyant force, the ship sinks. That's why every vessel has a load line, the plimsoll line, indicating the maximum permissible draft. Load the ship beyond this line, and the reserve buoyancy becomes dangerously low. But buoyancy is only half the story, and frankly, not the most intriguing half. Because a ship that floats but capsizes is no better than one that sinks. The real question is stability. The ability of a ship to return to an upright position after being tilted by an external force, wave, wind, or shifting cargo. And this is where the physics that determine a ship's fate come into play. Every ship has two critical points. The first is the center of gravity, marked by the letter G. This is the point where the entire weight of the ship is concentrated. It depends on how the mass is distributed, where the engines are, where the cargo lies, where the fuel tanks are, and where the superstructures are located. The center of gravity always pulls the ship downward. The second point we need to discuss is the center of buoyancy, denoted by the letter B. This is the geometric center of the submerged part of a ship's hull, the section below the waterline that displaces water. The buoyant force, or Archimedes' force, acts precisely at this point and is always directed upwards. When a ship is perfectly upright, both points, G, the center of gravity, and B, the center of buoyancy, align along the same vertical line. The ship's weight pulls down through G, while the buoyant force pushes up through B. These forces are equal and opposite, maintaining equilibrium. But imagine a wave tilts the ship a few degrees to the right. What happens then? The shape of the submerged hull changes. The starboard side dips deeper, while the port side rises. The volume of displaced water remains the same. The ship's weight hasn't changed. However, the geometry of this volume has shifted. The center of buoyancy, B, moves to the right, towards the more submerged side. Meanwhile, the center of gravity, G, stays almost in place. The ship's mass is still there, unchanged and unmoved. Now the ship's weight pulls down through G, and the buoyant force pushes up through B. But B is no longer directly under G. It has shifted rightward. These two forces, weight and buoyancy, create a couple, a rotational moment. And the direction of this moment is crucial. If the moment returns the ship to its upright position, the ship is stable. It will rock and then straighten. If the moment pushes the ship further into the tilt, the ship is unstable. It will capsize. To determine the outcome, engineers introduce another point, the metacenter, denoted by M. This is the point where the vertical line through the shifted center of buoyancy, B, intersects the ship's central axis. It's a geometric concept, but its physical significance is a matter of life and death. If the metacenter M is above the center of gravity G, the ship is stable. The distance Gm is known as the metacentric height. The greater this distance, the stronger the righting moment, and the more stable the ship. If the metacenter is below the center of gravity, it's game over. Any deviation from the vertical is amplified. The ship capsizes. Metacentric height, Gm. 2 letters, and within them lies the difference between a safe voyage and disaster. For a large container ship, a typical metacentric height ranges from 1.5 to 2.5 meters. For a cruise liner, it's between 1 and 2 meters. For a tanker, it varies from 2 to 5 meters, depending on the load. It might not sound like much, but this isn't a margin of safety left for aesthetics. It's a precisely calculated value, and it's a compromise. But here's the obvious question. If a greater metacentric height means more stability, why not make it as large as possible? Lower the center of gravity as much as you can. Place all the heavy cargo at the bottom. Fill the ballast tanks. Create a ship that can't be overturned. And this is where physics pushes back. An excessively large metacentric height results in an overly strong righting moment. A ship that snaps back to vertical after every tilt doesn't roll smoothly. It jerks back like a metronome. Short rolling periods, high angular accelerations. The cargo faces immense dynamic loads. Containers break free from their lashings. The securing rods snap. A stack of containers, 20 meters high, starts to sway, deform, and eventually the top containers are thrown overboard. The crew can't keep their footing. Equipment on the bridge, gauges, monitors, coffee cups, flies across the room. This is no exaggeration. Violent rolling is one of the most serious operational challenges for cargo ships. Containers are lost at sea regularly. Hundreds, if not thousands, go overboard each year, and a significant portion of these losses are due to parametric resonance and excessively harsh rolling. Too small a metacentric height, and the ship becomes tender. It rolls slowly, rights itself reluctantly, and any additional force, a gust of wind, a shift in cargo, a wave turning, might be the final push that sends it past the point of no return. Capsizing. Ideal stability isn't about reaching the maximum or minimum. It's about navigating a narrow corridor where a ship remains stable enough to avoid capsizing, yet gentle enough to protect its cargo and keep the crew comfortably in their bunks. Metacentric height offers insight into stability only at small angles of heel, 5, 10, maybe 15 degrees. But what happens when the angles grow larger? Enter the more complex tool, the static stability curve, or the GZ curve. This graph illustrates how the righting moment changes as the angle of heel increases. Initially, the moment grows, with the ship resisting more forcefully. Then it peaks before starting to decline, eventually reaching zero. This critical point is known as the angle of vanishing stability. Beyond this, the moment turns negative and the ship no longer rights itself, it capsizes. For most commercial vessels, the angle of vanishing stability ranges from 50 to 70 degrees. It sounds substantial, but in a raging ocean storm where waves impose dynamic loads and water on deck adds tons of weight high above the waterline, the actual margin can shrink significantly. There's a term every marine engineer knows and every captain dreads: free surface effect. Imagine a tank half filled with fuel. As the ship heels, the liquid shifts to the lower side. The mass moves with the heel, raising the ship's center of gravity. The metacentric height decreases and stability diminishes. This isn't a theoretical abstraction, it's a leading cause of ship disasters. A tanker carrying liquid cargo in partially filled tanks can lose stability simply due to the sloshing of liquid inside. That's why cargo tanks are designed to be narrow, divided by longitudinal bulkheads, and either fully filled or left empty. Partial filling is a danger zone. The fishing vessel West capsized and sank in the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Among the causes was the free surface effect in the fish holds. The catch wasn't properly secured, and as the ship rolled, the fish and water shifted from side to side, amplifying the motion until the vessel overturned. 6 of the 8 crew members perished. Free surface effect. 3 words that echo the loss of hundreds of sailors and dozens of sunken ships. Another critical scenario is compartment flooding. A breach, a collision, grounding, water rushes into the hull. Here, the final line of defense is activated: watertight bulkheads. The ship's hull is divided into compartments by transverse steel walls, each sealed off. If one floods, the water doesn't spread to the others. The number of compartments a ship can lose and still stay afloat is known as the index of subdivision. History's lessons were written in blood. After the Titanic sank in 1912, claiming 1,500 lives, the unsinkable liner's demise led to stricter compartmentalization standards. Each subsequent disaster, like the Andrea Doria in 1956 and the Estonia in 1994, prompted further revisions. Modern cruise ships must remain buoyant and stable even with several adjacent compartments flooded. This is calculated for thousands of scenarios, different combinations of flooded compartments, varying loads and sea conditions. Yet bulkheads are a compromise. More bulkheads mean greater safety, but less usable space within the hull. Each bulkhead represents tons of steel, reducing cargo hold or passenger area volume. Each is an obstacle to loading and unloading, to running pipelines and cables, to crew movement. A tanker with 10 longitudinal bulkheads is safer than one with 3, but loading and unloading it is a logistical nightmare. Thus, the number of bulkheads isn't simply the more the better. It's a precise balance between safety, economics, and operational efficiency. Let's circle back to where we began. Picture a 400-meter-long container ship, its cargo towering 30 meters above the deck, braving the winter storm across the ocean. Now you see it differently. It's not just a big ship. It's a complex system where every parameter — draft, beam, freeboard height, ballast weight, number of bulkheads, roll period — exists at the intersection of conflicting demands. The metacentric height isn't at its maximum or minimum. It's precisely calibrated so the ship won't capsize in a storm, yet won't toss its containers into the ocean due to violent rolling. The draft is just right to ensure buoyancy with a full load and a margin for stormy conditions, but not too deep or it won't dock at port. Bulkheads are calculated to withstand expected flooding, but not so many that the ship becomes an unmanageable steel maze. This isn't about sailing with maximum stability. It's about navigating a narrow corridor between capsizing and cargo damage, between buoyancy and draft, between unsinkability and economy. Every centimeter of metacentric height, every ton of ballast, every bulkhead is meticulously placed. And within this corridor lie hidden advantages that passengers and shippers rarely consider. Ballast tanks, which fill with water when the ship is empty, not only stabilize, but also position the propeller at an optimal depth, enhancing efficiency and saving fuel. Bilge keels, those slender steel fins on the hull, don't add lift but dampen roll, reducing angular accelerations and protecting the cargo. Anti-roll tanks, where water shifts from side to side with controlled delay, turn the free surface, usually a stability foe, into an ally that dampens rolling. This, I believe, is the true beauty of marine engineering. A ship isn't just an object that floats. It's a continuous negotiation with the physics of water. With gravity pulling down, with buoyancy pushing up, with waves trying to overturn, with cargo eager to shift, with water seeking any crack to flood in. Every vessel that leaves port is a response to all these forces at once. Not perfect, not maximal, the only feasible solution, at the point where all constraints intersect. When you see a container ship in a stormy ocean, you're not witnessing a mere mass of steel. You're seeing a precise balance, maintained by centimeters and degrees. And here's what makes me ponder. We've discussed how a ship resists capsizing. But what about when this balance is suddenly disrupted? When a rogue wave, towering 25 meters, crashes down on a vessel designed for 12-meter waves? How do extreme waves break the calculated model? And why do ocean-going ships still vanish without a trace in the 21st century? I've made a separate video delving into this in detail. You can find it on the channel.